the New Age arena. You start to speak about that, it's negative. Well, I don't think, knowledge is negative, ignorance is negative, because when you're in ignorance of what the problem is, then you can't do anything about it. So knowing what's going on is quite important. Reiterate the problem, we've got disconnected from the full magnitude of who we are, isolated in the five senses, thanks to the bamboozle set up to hold us in perceptual servitude, created the madhouse, and now the question is who's behind it or what's behind it. And this is where we go into some strange places. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. That's the program, and it's a big mistake if we're going to understand what's going on in the world. Total human control, we hide the real controllers, which is what has been happening through known human history. Who is the spider? What is this force and source that's driving all this? Well, it ain't them. Here today, gone tomorrow, politicians, different parties, same party, it doesn't matter, it's not them. No one who ever does this job, President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, yeah, okay, yep, I'll believe you. Nor is it even the corporations. A lot of people say it's the corporations, it's not. The corporations are not the origin of this control, they are a vehicle for it, not the spider. And it's no one who's sitting around a table making the decisions in the public eye. Those you see are only gophers for those you don't see. You can go deeper into the rabbit hole, away from the people you see, into the advisors. It's not them either. You can go even deeper, and you can find the Rothschilds and people like that. We are the Rothschilds. You don't see us, but we control your life. Well, yes, but only on one level. They're not the origin either. So who is the spider? What is the driving force? Mark Twain said, truth is stranger than fiction because fiction is obliged to stick to perceived possibilities. Truth isn't. Truth doesn't change because you don't want to hear it. And the postage stamp consensus is currently in an ambulance heading for emergency because it's heard what I'm going to say next. And this is as far off that postage stamp that you could possibly imagine. So are we ready? Who is the spider? This takes us into this next level of the rabbit hole, which is a level of non-human intelligence, which is behind what's going on in the world. All these different areas of human society of control, of secret societies, politics, banking, Satanism, pedophilia, military, media, religion, it all in the end ends up leading to one place, which is this spider, this force, which is not human. Frickin' obvious! Our consciousness interacts with another dimension. Our physical senses only show us a three-dimensional universe. What exists in the higher dimensions are entities we cannot touch with our physical senses. They're on different frequencies. And these non-human manipulators from other dimensions of reality have been described in many various ways by different cultures all over the world. The serpent gods, Chitahuri and the Zulu belief system, the children of the serpent, the Anunnaki, Sumer, Babylon, Snake Brothers, Hopi, Star People, many and various. They're called demons in Christianity, interdimensional entities. The Gnostic people I'll come to in a second called them archons, and the Islamic, or actually the pre-Islamic world where it originated from, called them jinn. And these are entities either that are manifesting within our reality, our visible light frequency band, or manipulating from outside of that visual frequency of perception. And the different ways, I say different ways, the common ways that they are described, many of them very, very compelling in different cultures and belief systems, they are clearly describing the same force. Like the archons in the Gnostic belief system, as they call them, they said of the archons, they were made from luminous fire, and they kind of create with luminous fire. And the jinn are said by the Islamic world to be made from smokeless fire. And the way that they are described, they're clearly describing the same entities, the same force. Now the Gnostics were not a race, or even a people, they were a belief system. They were a perception system. And whenever they got into a place and started to communicate this perception, this knowledge, it's what gnosis means, knowledge, but a certain kind of knowledge, they were persecuted by the Roman Church who sent the boys in. And 1/5 of these writings found at Nag Hammadi talk about something they call the archons. Just their name, it's a word means rulers, that's why they call them that. And they said that they were manipulating human society from the unseen and were responsible for basically creating the world of what we call physicality. Now, what I found fascinating from my point of view about the Nag Hammadi writings is that I came to them quite late, just a few years ago, which was very important for me, because if I'd have come across them earlier, they can become a one-stop shop belief system, which they have for some people. But by the time I came across them and read them in detail, I'd come to conclusions as a result of decades of research. So when I'm reading them, I'm thinking, well, this is unbelievable to me, because this is what they're saying is what I've concluded. It was a confirmation, a very detailed confirmation of what I concluded was going on. And in these Nag Hammadi writings, they describe something called the silence, what I would call, even Alexander would call, the dazzling darkness. The silence, what I experienced, the place of all potential, all possibility, the field of possibility and probability waiting to manifest. They said that the silence was the creative force. They said the physical world is a prison created by an evil fake god. Spirit, awareness, is entrapped in the body. Salvation, escape from this entrapment, comes from knowledge or gnosis of self and reality. And gnosis is knowledge, yes, but it's not knowledge, names, dates, places knowledge. It's knowledge of reality and how it works, that kind of knowledge. And they said the kingdom is invisible, which is true, because that which is beyond this reality is invisible to us. Now, this physical world prison that they describe in their language, I call the simulation. We update it into modern language. They said that this force was this evil fake god had created and was responsible for the world we live in at a physical level and for entrapping people in the physical world. And they had various names for this fake god. One of them was the demiurge. Another one was Yaldabaoth. It's also called Samael. This is the origin of Satan, the devil. And they said in these writings that the Old Testament God, Yahweh, Jehovah, was the Old Testament name for this fake God, which also was called in the writings Lord Archon. Again, where we get this whole theme of the Lord from in the Old Testament. Now you can see the correlation between the Nag Hammadi writings and their belief system, which hadn't been touched while it was in that sealed jar, and what you see in the Bible. Well, one of the Nag Hammadi writings says, talking about this fake god, I'll call it demiurge, opening his eyes, the chief archon saw a vast quantity of matter without limit, and he became arrogant, saying, it is I who am God, and there is no other power apart from me. And then if you go to Isaiah in the Old Testament, and there is none else, there is no God beside me. The correlations are quite blatant between the two. So Gnostic writings described this demiurge, this prime force of manipulation, as the blind one, blind to the spiritual world, disconnected from the greater picture, but understanding certain levels of reality in a way that it could manipulate and control. Now, this fake god, this demiurge, they describe the archons as the formless ones. We're not talking about something in form. We're talking about a state of awareness, a very highly distorted state of awareness, an imbalanced, inverted state of awareness or inverted frequency from which it seeks to pull everything into that same distortion. Now, a perception can be a panorama, so you see this vast panorama, or you can be in a pitch black room. It's still a perception, but it's a completely different perception. And this distorted perceptual state that they call the demiurge or the archons is a state of awareness that is without harmony, without wisdom, without heart, without empathy. All the things that people running this world don't have. One of the things we need to get away from is the fact that life, consciousness, awareness has to have two arms, two legs, a torso and a head. You can have heart-centered awareness, or you can have what we call evil awareness, which is a vast distortion of harmony. So the archons in their base form are a chaotic, imbalanced, inverted state of awareness, thus frequency. And the Gnostic writings talk about how the fake god, the demiurge, made copies of itself. So the archon demiurge became the Lord Archon of the archons, which were basically like, the way I see it anyway, it's like Agent Smith in the Matrix. It's a program, it's a software program, and there was one of them. And then it made loads and loads of copies of itself, and there were endless then Agent Smiths, all acting the same and looking the same. So I'm using the word archons here as a name for the many and various expressions of a deeply distorted and inverted awareness. Archon means prince, ruler, authorities, and from the beginning, basically, were responsible for it. They say that the demiurge is a fake god that created our physical or material reality as we perceive it. Gnostics related the demiurge to the Judeo-Christian Yahweh Jehovah God, and they said that the archons were inorganic. They did not result in and come in what we would call a natural way. Inorganic, not resulting or produced by growth, artificial. This is a form of artificial intelligence. They describe the archons as the guardians and the gatekeepers. The guardians are the gatekeepers of humanity going into a state of expanded awareness, holding them in that lower state of awareness because then they could control them. In expanded states of awareness, they cannot control. Thus, they want to stop us from going there. The writings say that the archons sought to overpower humanity in its psychological and perceptual functions. How the manipulation of perception is how the control system works. They said the archon agenda for humanity is creating fear and slavery. That's what's happened since this hijack took place. And if you look in the Bible, you'll see kind of indications of what I'm talking about here. But here's one. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities. Both names that actually mean archon in that language. Against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly, unseen realms. They described how the archontic awareness was expert in fantasia, creating illusions that the target population think are real. They describe them as mind parasites that possessed human perceptual processes. That they were experts in deception. They were called the deceivers, and also in inversion. It's made humans blind so the one-eyed man can control. Once we become the two-eyed, three-eyed, third-eyed human, expanded awareness beyond that, it's over. But not until, and that means breaking the program and letting go of all these belief systems that hold us in servitude. The archontic writings of the Gnostics also say that the archons made a bad copy of the original reality. They say the bad copy is where we are now, this world. Again, he's back. Bad copy, what you freaking talking about? The real world, prime reality, is described in terms of being the upper eons. This is the place of spirit. This is a place of pure awareness. And they say we live in a lower eons. They call it a shadow world, which is a reflection of prime reality. Copy, a bad copy, in other words, of that original reality, which of course still exists. And we can interact with it when we open our five sense minds to consciousness. So what we're looking at, we're talking about bad copies, and we're talking about, different worlds. We're talking about information sources. That's what we're talking about. Because just as in this world, we think it's a world, but we are decoding an information source into the world that I've described that we think is outside of us, but is inside of us. What happened with this bad copy is one information source was replaced by another, the simulation, and humans started to decode and experience the simulation as if it was real, because they were decoding it the same way through the same senses. You can decode one information source and then decode another, and your experience is dramatically different, but they both seem real. Nag Hammadi Tech's Origin of the World says, now the eternal realm, the eternal eon, the upper eon of truth, has no shadow outside it, for the limitless light is everywhere within it. But its exterior is shadow, which has been called by the name darkness. From it there appeared a force presiding over the darkness, and the forces that came into being subsequent to them called the shadow the limitless chaos. The word chaos is used again and again to describe the actions of this archontic force, which is a chaotic, distorted state of awareness. Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, in other words, these writings say, created the lower eons as an image or reflection of the upper eons. This is the simulation, I'm calling it. In relation to the reflection which he saw in it, he created the world. With a reflection of a reflection, he worked at producing the world. So what they're describing is pure awareness in a higher frequency realm of what they call upper eons, the realm of spirit. And this reality being a realm of form or matter. The upper eons are the realm of no time, and the fake reality is the realm of time, illusory time. So I'm saying they're describing the simulation, the fake reality. And, it's interesting, when you look at the Matrix, the person that created the Matrix in the movie was known as the architect. Well, the Freemasonic God is known as the great architect of the universe. And the Gnostics called the demiurge the great architect of the universe. They're describing the force that created this reality. Not what we call God or infinite awareness, the creative force, but this distortion created this distorted reality. Now, where is the matrix? It's in our heads. It's in our perceptual decoding system. And therefore, if we are locked in only to the frequency of the matrix has completely got control of our perception of reality. When you expand your awareness, you still experience the matrix on one level, but you can see and perceive beyond it, and thus you start to see where you are. You're starting to see the maze now. They don't want us there. This is why they're terrified of this information.